Ambassador, what is your perception about women's issues in Egypt? Do you think there has been
I'm
progress?
making a speech on that at the American Chamber in a couple of days. It's a bad situation. Do you know Egypt in 2012 was rated 124 out of 135 countries?
Wow.
That's the World Economic Forum statistics. That's pretty staggering. And while health and education are better, the issue of economic empowerment and political involvement is extremely low. And clearly this has been true for years.
Yeah, but do you think the existence of a religious regime in power would even deteriorate that more?
I think there are risks with that. Of course there are risks of that. Because I think there are risks of that. But let's say the situation here on things like female genital mutilation, on women's unemployment, which is staggeringly high. The number of young women who come out of school, only 30% of them get jobs, even though they're educated almost to the same extent of men. This is all worrisome, and again, this isn't new. I think my impression is there were very significant advances in political participation, but still it's very small. Not a single political party, single religious group has any woman in a leadership position.
What about and also the harassment, of course, in the streets?
And harassment, yes. And we're working with the Ministry of Interior to put together a program on investigating sexual assaults. And the minister is sending some police women and policemen to Miami in a couple of weeks to take some training. And we hope we can work with women's groups and with the ministry to set up a sexual assault response unit, which has been very effective in the U.S.
But on women, my point is with Ikhwan in power, they even want the women to be backwards even more. Look at the response on the anti-violent, UN anti-violent decree.
Yes, I agree. That's worrisome. But let's also be frank here. The situation of women in this country hasn't been good for quite a long while. I mean, the illiteracy rate, the health, again, huge advances in health care, maternal and child mortality, but in terms of education and empowerment, and we in the U.S. government are trying to help on the economic side. We have this program on sexual assault, but also to do things like educating women and to improve their health conditions, and to do things like through our qualifying industrial zones that will increase the employment of women, because the key here is economic. Once women have money and capacity, they have more power in the family and in society.
What about the cops situation?
Cops are scared. Cops are very scared. Yes. And I think there are worrisome elements here.
And I've heard that Mr. Wolf at the Congress, Senator Wolf at the Congress, has brought that up.
Yes, of course. A number of congressmen and senators have brought up concern about the cops. Again, over many years, this has been an issue in our U.S. Congress. I know cops are particularly apprehensive right now and scared about what's going on in Egypt. And I hope we can do some programs, small programs certainly, given the size of the problem, to encourage communication among various religious sects, because that's really the key, that Muslims and Christians have to work together at an early age, as they have for many decades in Egypt, and overcome these concerns.
Are you talking to the government about these issues?
Yes, of course, all the time.
What do they say?
Well, it depends on the issue, of course, and it depends on the service. They say that cops are an integral part of Egypt, that they are the original Egyptians, as it were, and that they're doing everything they can. Cops are afraid. I know that cops are afraid.
Do you think the government is doing what it can, with the best of its ability, to make cops feel safe in Egypt?
No, I think they're concerned. For instance, the investigation of the incident of the cathedral a few weeks ago. As far as I know, that hasn't been fully investigated, and at least no report has been issued. Some of these issues and violence that takes place in rural areas of the country, that's been inadequately investigated. I visited the church in Alexandria, which was car bombed before about 2.5 years ago. That hasn't been fully investigated. We raise these issues with the government all the time and offer our assistance in law enforcement investigation.
Ambassador, you came here in July 2011. I read an article or an interview with you at the Global Post in, I think, December 2011, and you said you were not comfortable meeting or sitting with Ikhwan of the Ikhwan Muslimin. What changed that?
Well, I think, frankly speaking, I think we hadn't had contact with them for a while, and frankly we hadn't had contact with a number of groups in Egypt. I think in retrospect that was a mistake, because now we have contact with every group, a wide range of groups, and we need their perspective, because one of our jobs here is to articulate and report to Washington a wide range of views, and the only way we can do that is to talk to all the players on the political scene.
So when you talk to
I think it was, I said that, and I think it was a mistake. I think we should have reached out to some of these other groups earlier. Certainly during the Mubarak administration we should have reached out to them, because again we needed to know the full range of opinion in this country.
But my perception is that the embassy, maybe not yourself, but the embassy has been meeting with a lot of Ikhwani leaders, whether here or in Washington.
Yes, and we meet with
even before they come to power, even before the revolution.
Yes, and we started to reach out to them as they became a major political force, and they reached out to us too. And again, they weren't alone. We talked to a whole range of political parties. We've made mistakes here because we've underestimated, and I talk about this a lot in Washington, we've underestimated a lot of these political currents here. So we didn't have much knowledge of some of these currents, and that needs to change, because we need to again have the full range of views here.
Do you feel maybe you're doing the same mistakes regarding the opposition, that you're putting all your support behind one group and you're forgetting about the other group?
I don't think that at all. We talk to the opposition all the time.
Not as frequent as you talk to the Ikhwan Muslimin.
That's not right. We do talk to them just as frequently. I think we have a broad range. We bring visitors from Washington. There's not a visitor that doesn't come here that doesn't meet with the opposition figures at one level or the other. We have a very large embassy, so our younger people will meet with younger opposition figures, and it goes up the scale.
Yes, but the ambassador, you meet with Lkhayrat الشاطر a lot, you meet with Badi a lot, with the Murshid of Al-Ikhwan a lot. What do you speak about?
Actually, you want to know something? I met with the Murshid one time, and I hear these sort of bizarre theories.
It is strange. Why do you meet with Al-Murshid?
Because the Murshid is the leader of a major movement in Egypt.
What do you discuss?
Well, I haven't seen him in a year and a half, so I'm not really sure what I discussed other than his.
You haven't seen him in a year and a half? I think
these bizarre stories get out there. Some of which are promoted by the press. And I'm glad to have a chance to rectify this, because some of these bizarre stories get out there about the American embassy. Now we write letters to the press and say this article is incorrect. Sometimes we get this astonishing reply, well, we have sources. Well, your sources are wrong sometimes. Often they're wrong. So you can call us or ask us or come see our press office about these sorts of things.
So when was the last time you met with Lkhayrat الشاطر?
3 or 4 months ago.
What do you discuss? I mean,
we discussed the economic program, because one thing Howard El-Shatter is a businessman, so there are economic problems. I meet with the opposition, I meet with the business community. You are on the door knock. Yes, this is a very active business community. We meet with them constantly, so we have a broad range of interests. But we don't meet disproportionately with the Ikhwan. I assure you of that.
I respect what you say, but you discuss the economic situation with the government, not with a party that is not even ruling.
That's not accurate. We discuss the economic situation with all the parties. We meet with the Wasat party. We meet with the Dastur party. They all have economic platforms. We meet with Abdel Fattah's party. Of course we discuss the economy, and we discuss it with the business community. Our economic and commercial interests are hugely important here, hugely important. We have a lot of investment here. We have a lot of potential trade. So we discuss this with everybody.
What are your concerns about the opposition? I know you have some concerns. Washington has some concerns.
We don't have concerns about the opposition. The opposition is an Egyptian political opposition. We don't have concerns about them.
When Secretary Kerry was here, he was talking to them, trying to convince them that they should run in the election, they should participate and take part.
Actually, what Secretary Kerry said, he said it's up to them whether they run into election, but he did make this observation, which I thought was an important one. Secretary Kerry said that he'd been a politician for 35 or 40 years. And a politician who doesn't participate in politics isn't going to be a politician much longer. I think that was the point he was trying to make to the political opposition. If you're not participating in politics, your life as a political party is probably not very long. So he said, yes, you should probably participate in the political process.
Ambassador, you've been the U.S. ambassador in Pakistan before you come here. Do you think Egypt is another Pakistan?
No, I think they're hugely different. There's very, very little commonality between Egypt and Pakistan. Egypt is a country of 7,000 years of huge social cohesion, a really profound national character. Pakistan dates from 1947 and has been split apart by ethnic, sectarian, regional rivalries its entire existence. There's really no comparison.
I've heard Secretary Kerry's remarks on the army at the Congress, and we were talking about that. However, you said maybe in a recent panel of yours, and correct me if this was quoted wrong, that the army should not take part at the political scenery, the army should not be back. What is exactly what you said?
What I said, and I think you're referring to a recent presentation, is that the army, it would be catastrophic or disastrous for U.S. relations with Egypt, because the army rule is inconsistent with democracy in all parts of the world. And I want to say that I think you Egyptians are blessed by an army that's very different from most armies in this part of the region. They took over reluctantly. They turned power over to a civilian government. They said they don't want to be involved in the political system, and as we started out, now they have a much more complex regional security environment, and they have to work on defending the country, so they have lots of things to do. Basically, their role is to protect Egypt's borders.
I'll take you out a little bit to the regional perspective. And you mentioned Syria in the middle of our conversation. Where does Egypt stand from Syria? I mean, me as an Egyptian, I got confused. Are we against, is this government against Bashar al-Assad? Is it pro the opposition? It is very confusing. When they meet with the Iranians, there's something. When they meet with the Russians, there's something else. What do you have?
The government has been incredibly consistent in every conversation that we've had with them, foreign minister, the presidency, that they are determined that Bashar al-Assad should go. And they have put forward a couple of times what I would call peace proposals that involve the Iranians. They've been very active. Secretary Kerry has brought them in. There's a meeting in Amman, I think, in the next couple of days. There's a big conference in Geneva that's been much publicized in which your government will participate. So they've really been quite consistent in this, that Bashar al-Assad has to go.
But consistent, as you say, it does not look the same when they met, when Dr. Morsi met with Putin, because he said that Egypt and Russia see an eye to eye on the Syrian situation. How consistent is that?
Well, let me say, I can only report on the conversations that we've had with them, but they have been consistent, and frankly, before that, this has been consistent consistent Egyptian policy about Bashar al-Assad, that he has to go, and there has, as far as I know, been no wavering on that whatsoever. The government has reached out to Iran on the theory, not without foundation, that Iran has to be part of some sort of settlement. So there have been discussions between the Egyptian government and the Iranian government on that, but they would have to speak to that. But I know everyone in the region, and certainly every senior person in this government, in the Egyptian government, is extremely concerned about Syria.
Does the Egyptian government advise you on the discussions with the Iranian counterparts?
Absolutely. We discuss the Syria situation all the time. It is a very important issue in this region for everybody. When we meet with the military, when we meet with intelligence, when we meet with the foreign ministry, Syria, regrettably, I'm afraid, is at the top of everybody's list right now.
Yeah, so what is the role of Egypt regarding the Iranian position, if you can fill me up?
The President of Egypt proposed at least twice what I would call a peace proposal that would discuss
the
quartet, and then there was a variation of that would bring in Iran to some kind of peace settlement that Egypt would help broker. And we welcome Egypt's efforts. And we welcome Egypt's efforts in this conference that is going to take place in a few weeks. Egypt is an important regional player, a critical regional player, and they have to play a role.
But of course you know that the quartet has never met because of the Saudi position.
Yes, well, yes, but they have reached out to Iran. Again, we think Iran, we have suspicions of Iran, and we don't think they're I won't say legitimate player. We don't think they're an honest player in this process. And of course they're fueling the situation in Syria. But this has to be resolved in a regional context, and I think Egypt is going to be a good contributor to that.
This government, this regime does not speak a lot about Israel or the Camp David Pact. What do they tell you? Do they tell you that they abide by the peace treaty?
Absolutely.
Abide by the peace treaty and the Camp David Pact.
They abide by the peace treaty. There's never been the slightest wavering from that position. And again, nothing could be more important. As the sort of cornerstone of regional peace, Camp David is key. They've never had the slightest wavering from that position.
Ambassador, how true is the news that you are being promoted?
These are all rumors until they're not rumors. So there are always rumors surrounding any assignment. We serve at the pleasure of the Secretary and the President, so it's very hard to say.
So have you been offered the position of Assistant Secretary?
It's just a lot of rumors at this point. So until some decision is made, nothing is ever certain.
Is this decision made by yourself or by the department?
Well, all these decisions, any decision is made as a collective, but we do serve at the pleasure of President Obama and the Secretary.
So did you accept the offer?
Again, nothing is certain until a decision is made, a final decision is made by the White House.
Ambassador Patterson, I want to thank you very much for this interview.
Thank you.
ده كان لقائنا مع السفيرة الأمريكية أند باترسون. ربما تقبل وربما لا تقبل المنصب الجديد المعروض عليها. أشكركم، وهذه لميس الحديدي تحييكم. تصبحوا على خير.